Even if we get no more snow, we'd still be at 128% of the end of the snow season, which is April 1st, which sounds like pretty good news, right?
Well, Amr, you're right. It is good news. You know, it was positive news coming out of this snow survey today. But as we know, things are anything but typical here in California when we are talking about extreme weather conditions. We have been in periods of drought over the last 20 years. So even though we have this much snow right now, the big question for water managers is whether we have already hit the peak of our snow season from all the atmospheric rivers, those large storm systems we had this winter, or that we could still rely on more. They use April 1st as a metric. That is when we typically see the peak of our snow season. But with these extreme weather conditions, water managers now have to walk a fine line between forecasting extreme dry and extreme wet conditions. It's one of the most tried and true ways for Sean de Guzman and his team at the Department of Water Resources to measure snowpack and its water content. That dates back to the early 20th century. First taking this apparatus called a federal sampler into the snow, then using a scale and math to figure out its water content.
105 minus 75, that gets you 30 inches. So 30 inches of snow water content.
This is DWR's second snow survey of the season. This Phillips Station site is one of 260 throughout the Sierras to get measured, with Wednesday's positive numbers showing snowpack at 193% of the February 1st average for this location. DWR's director, Carla Namath, is managing California's state of extremes. The state just experienced its wettest 3-week period over December and January, while coming off the heels of the driest 3 years in recorded history.
Couldn't have asked for anything better, but there's a lot more that needs to play out over the course of the next several months for us to really capture our full water supply picture here in California.
Forecasting has become a challenge because of extreme weather patterns instigated by climate change. Traditionally, April 1st is the typical peak of the snow season, but Sean doesn't know if the peak will happen then or if it's already happened.
Things are still kind of up in the air. It's a little harder to forecast outside of a 2-week period. But with where we are right now, it's great to be above average. And if it weren't to snow for the remainder of the year, we'd have more than our annual average.
Generally, California's wet months are still ahead, and only time will tell what kind of water year we're actually having. February is one of those traditional wet months, and it's starting off dry. But for now, the latest results will certainly help quench the thirst of parched California. Now, we'll have a better idea of what it looks like right now with drought conditions, if we're out of this period of drought yet, as well as the water allocations from the State Water Project. They will know this when they're able to crunch all the numbers from the various survey sites. And Carla Namath says she thinks by the end of February, they will have a better understanding. They'll also be able to report if they're able to increase allocations from water from the State Water Project. Millions of Southern Californians use that water.
Sarah, I got to tell you, we're not used to hearing anything remotely approximating good news when it comes to water, so thank you for being the messenger of that. But the New York Times did report that there's been something of a breakdown of the predictive power of the snowpack, that last year we had about an average snowpack, but it wound up giving us less than average amounts of water. This is specifically with the Colorado River. Did you ask about that? Did you hear anything about that predictive power for this year?
I did. I asked them about runoff because runoff from the snow melt is also something the department has to predict. In the past few years, because of the drought and such hot and dry conditions, that snow melt runoff forecast has been a little skewed, and that is because water evaporates and also because the ground was bone dry. It also absorbs that water. So therefore, the reservoirs, the streams, they're getting less water. Now, they did say, the department, that because we did receive precipitation and storms in the fall, in November, early December, that the ground and soil moisture has increased. This soil is now primed for runoff. So instead of the snowpack sitting on top of dry earth, they have a better feeling that we'll have more runoff this year than we've had in the past during drought. But this is, of course, something that they are always monitoring because they do have to forecast this as well, Amrit.
Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. Evaporation being part of the reason why the Colorado water is also in contention. Thank you, Sarah. And